You know, when I was growing up, I never thought I'd end up here, sitting alone, pouring my heart out, wondering how my life went sideways when it should have been perfect. My name is Elizabeth, and this is the story of how my parents gave my brother everything. A $500,000 house, their time, their pride, while I was left with scraps, silence, and a growing emptiness that only got worse with time. It all started when I was a little girl in Ohio, in a neat suburban neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, and appearances mattered more than feelings. My parents, Karen and Michael, were the kind of people who smiled politely, paid their bills on time, and talked about success as if it was something you could buy like groceries. They loved their kids. Or at least that's what they told us. But looking back, it was always about the one who made them look good in front of others, my older brother, Ryan. Ryan was everything I wasn't supposed to be, or at least that's what I felt. He was outgoing, athletic, charming, and always top of his class. He had friends, leadership roles, scholarships, and admirers. I, on the other hand, was quiet, introspective, and more interested in painting, writing, and late-night journaling than parties or sports. I liked books more than people, and that made me invisible. It wasn't that they hated me. No, it was worse than that. They just didn't see me. When Ryan scored perfect grades and earned a spot at an Ivy League university, my parents threw a celebration that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Balloons, a caterer, speeches, and proud smiles plastered across their faces. For me, my achievements, academic, creative, personal, were met with a polite nod, "That's nice, sweetie," and then back to worrying about Ryan's future. I didn't expect them to celebrate me the same way. I guess I hoped they'd notice me, that they'd ask how I felt. But they didn't. They were too busy securing loans, networking, and planning for Ryan's bright future. After college, I moved back to the city, found odd freelance gigs, and kept busy trying to build something of my own. Paid my own rent. Cooked my own meals. I figured that was independence, right? But independence without acknowledgement is loneliness wrapped in pride. Meanwhile, Ryan moved back home. He had a job at a tech startup in New York, and within months, my parents had arranged a down payment for him on a $500,000 house. A beautiful place overlooking a lake with floor-to-ceiling windows and modern appliances that screamed success. I visited once. I remember walking through that house, touching the marble countertops, running my fingers along the hardwood floors, and pretending I wasn't jealous. Ryan laughed and joked with his friends, while my parents glowed, basking in the admiration of neighbors and family friends. "Isn't this amazing?" my mom whispered to a neighbor as I stood in the corner, unnoticed. I smiled, forced a laugh, and nodded, but something inside me twisted. The invitation to Ryan's housewarming came a few weeks later. It wasn't a warm, heartfelt message like, "We want you here." It was brief and distant. "Hope you can make it. It'd be great to see you." I agonized over whether to go. But deep down, I think I wanted to prove to myself that I was strong enough to handle it. So I showed up. I wore something simple but elegant. Nothing flashy. I wanted to fit in without calling attention to myself. But as soon as I walked through the door, I knew I didn't belong. The house was filled with people my age. Successful, confident, loud with laughter. The decorations were tasteful, the food gourmet, and the whole atmosphere screamed accomplishment. My parents floated through the crowd, introducing Ryan to neighbors and coworkers. "That's our boy," my mom beamed, her eyes shining with pride. "So smart, so driven." I stood quietly with a glass of wine, watching them from across the room, wondering if they even remembered I was there. I didn't have to wonder for long. I heard my mother speaking in hushed tones to one of Ryan's friends as I passed by. "Oh, Elizabeth. She's doing freelance stuff, always busy, you know. It's hard to keep up with her schedule." The words hit me harder than a slap. Busy. Always busy. That's what I was to them. A nuisance they couldn't keep track of. I smiled at them, flashed a polite grin, but inside I crumbled. Later that night, as I sat in the guest room at a friend's place, I stared at the ceiling and cried. Hot tears streamed down my face, each one a mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I felt like I didn't exist. But that night something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about being overlooked anymore. It was about being erased. And when someone tries to erase you, sometimes you have to rewrite the story yourself. That's where it all began. After that housewarming party, I kept telling myself that I was overreacting. Maybe my parents were just stressed. Maybe they were overwhelmed with Ryan's achievements and the new responsibilities that came with it. Maybe they loved me but didn't know how to show it. But deep down I knew something wasn't right. For weeks after that night, I barely spoke to them. I made excuses, deadlines, freelance projects, a networking event. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the emptiness. But the pain kept creeping back, especially when I saw pictures of Ryan's new house on social media, or when friends mentioned how proud your parents must be. I wanted to believe it was just a phase. But reality has this way of clawing its way back in, no matter how much you try to push it away. The truth hit me when I accidentally discovered something. Something I wish I hadn't. It was a chilly Friday afternoon. I had run an errand near my parents' place and thought I'd surprise them with coffee. I figured maybe I'd bridge the distance, reconnect. I parked my car, walked in quietly, and headed toward the kitchen. That's when I heard it. "We can't keep doing this, Michael," my mother's voice whispered, tight with anxiety. "Not yet, Karen," my father replied, his voice low, defensive. "It's complicated. Ryan's here, he's thriving. Everything's falling into place. We'll manage." Froze. I crept closer to the hallway, heart pounding in my chest. The kitchen door was slightly ajar. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. "You're playing favorites, Michael. It's always been Ryan. What about Elizabeth? She's here, she's struggling." "It's not that simple," his voice barked, frustration laced with guilt. I felt my stomach drop. There it was. They knew. They knew exactly how I felt. They had chosen not to see it. Worse, they had prioritized Ryan. I stood frozen, my hand gripping the doorframe so tightly my knuckles went white. I wanted to scream, to storm in and demand answers. But I didn't move. I listened as they continued. "We'll figure it out," my father whispered. "We'll set something up for her later. Right now, Ryan needs us." Later. Later meant never. I backed away quietly, my eyes stinging. My hands trembled, my breath shallow. I left without knocking, without saying a word. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the conversations replaying in my mind again and again. Every word felt like a blade, slicing through the fragile hope I'd been holding on to. I wasn't a priority. I was a burden to be managed later. That's when the betrayal solidified. It wasn't that my parents loved Ryan more. It was that they had chosen to actively ignore me, to leave me to fend for myself while building the world around him. I wanted to fall apart, to spiral into sadness. But I didn't. Instead, I sat quietly with my laptop open, scrolling through my inbox. Freelance offers, half-hearted messages, bills. All trivial compared to the wound inside me. I stared at the screen until 3 a.m. That's when I remembered something Ryan had once said at dinner. "You're overthinking it, Elizabeth. You're too sensitive. The world's tough. You've got to harden up." Clenched my jaw. Yes, I was sensitive. But sensitivity didn't make me weak. It made me human. And human emotions, when bottled up and pushed aside, don't disappear. They ferment, they grow, they turn into something else. Revenge. For weeks I watched them from afar. I kept my distance, but I wasn't blind. I saw how easily they discussed Ryan's success, how little effort they made to check in on me. I saw how comfortable they were in their silence. And then the opportunity came, uninvited, like fate knocking at my door. One afternoon, I received a message from my childhood friend, Jenna. She texted, "Hey Liz, funny thing happened. I was at your parents' place helping out with some home repairs. Caught something wild. Call me." My heart raced. Called immediately. "Liz, you need to hear this." Jenna's voice was hushed with excitement and guilt. "Your dad, and Ryan's business coach. I think it's more than business." "What do you mean?" I whispered. "I mean cheating. Your dad's been involved. And it's complicated." Felt dizzy. What do you mean cheating?" "I'm serious." I wasn't supposed to overhear, but they've been meeting behind your mom's back. There's even pictures on their phone. I'm freaking out. I sat frozen, the phone slipping from my hand. My breath hitched. My chest felt heavy, as if the floor had dropped beneath me. My dad. My family. Betrayal layered on betrayal. I knew that if this was true, it wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was deception, lies, and manipulation. And it wasn't just hurting me, it was destroying everyone. I spent the next few days in turmoil. Part of me wanted to confront them, scream, demand answers. Another part wanted to disappear. Cut them out of my life completely. But something darker was brewing. I realized I had been left out not by accident, but by design. The whispers in the kitchen, the empty nods at gatherings, the excuses. It was all a slow erasure. And now, I had proof that the betrayal ran deeper than I could have imagined. That's when I made my decision. I wouldn't crumble. I wouldn't beg for love or attention. I would fight back. But not with anger alone. I would fight with strategy, with patience, with precision, and with a plan that none of them saw coming. I bookmarked the message from Jenna and hid it where no one would find it. I started collecting information quietly. Phone logs, overheard conversations, patterns in behavior. The betrayal had become my fuel. The wound my weapon. I knew what I had to do. 4 days after Jenna's call, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling in my apartment, the flickering light of the street lamps casting shadows that danced across the walls like silent accusations. First I cried. Not the quiet sobbing kind, but the messy, breathless, uncontrollable kind. I cried until my eyes were swollen and raw, until I could barely breathe through the tightness in my chest. Why, I asked myself again and again. Why me? Why my family? Was it something I'd done? Something I hadn't done? Was I too fragile? Too ambitious? Too needy? Or was I simply the one they decided to cast aside? I imagined my mother's face when she looked away from me at dinner. I heard my father's voice dismissing my concerns as overthinking. I remembered the way Ryan smiled, how confident and proud he was. How easily he carried himself knowing that everyone had chosen him. The betrayal wasn't just in words. It was in the way they looked past me. In the way they built walls of silence and smiles, pretending everything was fine. And now, it was in the secret they thought I would never discover. For hours, I sat in my apartment, hugging my knees, staring blankly at the floor. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I ignored texts. I let calls go to voicemail. But slowly something shifted. I wasn't going to let them erase me. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. This was about power, control, manipulation. And I wasn't going to let them win. The first time I let rage creep in, it felt intoxicating. My hands shook when I thought of exposing them. I imagined telling my mother, "I know what you're hiding." I imagined shattering the perfect family facade they had carefully constructed. But as the hours stretched into days, a cooler, sharper thought took root. If I wanted to fight back, I needed more than emotion. I needed a plan. I needed patience. I needed precision. Revenge wasn't about screaming in the moment. It was about taking the long game, the one they'd never anticipate. Step 1. Gathering information. I started small. I reached out to Jenna again, asking for more details. She was hesitant but eventually sent me screenshots of text messages between my father and the other man. Ambiguous but enough to suggest something illicit. Then I hired a private investigator. Yes, I did. Sounds extreme, but I didn't care anymore. I wanted to know every secret, every lie. Within a week, I had more than enough. They'd been meeting regularly. I decided not to confront them. Instead, I began acting normal. I visited my parents' house, smiling politely, making small talk, as if nothing had changed. My mother greeted me warmly. My father looked tired but relieved to see me. Ryan, bless his oblivious self, was eager to include me in his weekend plans. I kept my face calm, my eyes soft. Inside I was burning. They thought they'd silenced me. They thought I was broken. Let them think that. I kept notes, dates, times, overheard conversations, storing them in an encrypted file on my laptop. Hidden away like ammunition waiting for the right moment. Revenge is more effective when it's strategic. I reached out to people I hadn't spoken to in years. Cousins, family friends, neighbors. People who had quietly noticed how different things had become between me and my family. I didn't ask for sympathy. I asked for information. Did anyone notice how distant my mother had become? Did anyone see my father's strange absences? Did anyone suspect Ryan's smugness? I collected pieces of the puzzle. It was overwhelming at times, but it made me feel powerful. Now that I had facts, I began to plan how to reveal them. Not in a way that made me look desperate or vengeful, but undeniable. I outlined scenarios in my notebook. First, create a private video montage of all the texts, photos, and evidence. Second, schedule a family gathering, a dinner under the guise of reconciliation. Third, time the reveal when emotions are raw and the audience is captive. But I didn't want to humiliate them in front of strangers. I wanted them to feel the weight of their choices intimately, deeply, personally. I wanted them to look into my eyes and realize what they had thrown away. Through it all, I had to hold myself together. There were nights I wanted to spiral into despair. There were times I envied Ryan's seemingly perfect life. But then I reminded myself, revenge isn't about making them suffer. It's about reclaiming my dignity, my voice, and my place. I started working out regularly. I journaled every morning. I practiced meditation to keep my mind sharp. I even enrolled in a leadership course, a silent declaration to myself that I wasn't broken. I was rebuilding. The final push came when I walked into my parents' house one evening and overheard them planning a vacation. "Ryan's been so successful," my mother said brightly. "We deserve some time away, just us. Elizabeth will understand. She's always been independent." Independent. That word was a slap in the face. They wanted to celebrate their son's accomplishments while discarding me like an inconvenience. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and made a decision. No more waiting. It was time to make them face the truth. Revenge isn't always about fire and fury. Sometimes it's quiet. It's cold. It's patient. It's a slow burn that consumes you from the inside until you're ready to act. I knew that once I moved forward, nothing would be the same. But that's okay. I was ready. The night I decided to move forward, I barely slept. I stared at the piles of notes, screenshots, photographs, recordings, all neatly organized like puzzle pieces waiting to be placed in their final positions. It wasn't about rage anymore. It was about control. I wanted every step to be deliberate, every word calculated, every glance unforgettable. This wasn't going to be a scene. It was going to be a reckoning. I sent invitations a week in advance. Family dinner. Let's reconnect. Simple, polite, non-threatening. No one questioned it. My mother replied immediately. "That sounds lovely, Elizabeth. We've missed you." My father sent a thumbs-up emoji. Ryan texted, "Looking forward to catching up. I'll bring wine." Their ease made me shiver inside. For the first time since discovering their secrets, I felt powerful. I spent the days leading up to the dinner meticulously preparing. I rented a private dining room at a cozy restaurant, intimate enough to avoid outsiders, but elegant enough to feel special. I arranged the seating so I would sit across from my parents and beside Ryan, close enough to observe their reactions but far enough to remain calm. I rehearsed how I'd speak, where I'd pause, what expressions I'd wear. It was theater, but the audience didn't know the play they were about to witness. The day arrived. I dressed deliberately. Not flashy, but understated elegance. A soft blue dress that made my eyes pop, paired with subtle makeup. I wanted them to see strength, composure, beauty, and serenity. Inside I was trembling. I arrived early and reviewed everything one last time. The files were on my phone and laptop, encrypted and ready to go. The videos, compiled from screenshots and recordings, were saved in high resolution. The documents outlining dates and details were printed, with sticky notes highlighting key moments. This wasn't going to be a messy accusation. It was going to be clean, cold, irrefutable. They arrived one by one. My mother's eyes lit up when she saw me. "Elizabeth, it's so good to see you." My father pulled me into a hug, his hand lingering for a fraction too long, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps from habit. Ryan smiled wide and clapped my shoulder. "Looking great, Liz. You sure know how to pull this off." Smiled back. "It's good to see all of you," I replied, my voice steady, soft. As we ordered appetizers, conversation flowed. Surface-level chatter about work, mutual acquaintances, weekend plans. But I watched them closely. My mother's eyes darted whenever I spoke of family gatherings. My father's throat tightened when I mentioned how much I missed holidays. Ryan's smile stiffened when I complimented him. I let them stew in their discomfort, offering warmth and small laughs like sugar-coating poison. After the main course arrived, I raised my glass. "To family," I said, smiling at all of them. "For sticking together." They clinked glasses, unsuspecting. Then I took a deep breath. "I want to say something," I began. "Something I've been holding back for a while." My mother's eyes narrowed. My father's jaw tightened. Ryan's smile faltered. I looked at each of them, letting silence stretch. "I love you all," I continued. "But I also need to be honest." Pulled my phone out. "This isn't easy for me to share, but I think it's time you all hear it." My mother's fingers trembled around her wine glass. My father's eyes darted to Ryan before meeting mine. Ryan forced a grin. Press play. The screen lit up with texts between my father and the other man. First they seemed innocuous, but then came the intimate phrases. "I miss you. Can't wait to see you again. I hate pretending around them." My mother froze. Her lips parted slightly, but no words emerged. My father's face drained of color. Ryan's eyes widened like he'd been caught committing a crime. I let them watch. The silence was unbearable. I let it hang, stretched thin like glass ready to shatter. Without comment, I opened the next folder. Photos. Clear ones. My father's arm slung around the stranger's shoulder. Their faces pressed together. Laughing in hotel lobbies. Clinking glasses at a private bar. The evidence was undeniable. My mother covered her mouth. My father's hands curled into fists. Ryan's breathing hitched. I played a recorded conversation. My father's voice, unmistakable, whispering, "I can't stand the lies anymore. I need this. I need him." My mother's eyes brimmed with tears. Ryan stared blankly, as if trying to memorize every word to explain it later. But there was no explanation left. For the first time my voice trembled. "I know everything," I said quietly. "Every lie. Every secret. Every time I felt invisible while you lived a double life." My mother began to cry. "Elizabeth, I'm sorry." My father stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. You don't know what you're talking about. I know more than you'll ever admit, I snapped. Ryan, pale and silent, looked away. But I wasn't done. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd created. Receipts. Every hidden hotel stay. Every gift purchased under false pretenses. I handed a printed copy to each of them. This is the truth, I whispered. You built a world where appearances mattered more than love. You thought you could hide from me. My mother sobbed uncontrollably. My father's eyes filled with tears, but guilt and shame warred with his defenses. Ryan excused himself and walked out. Sat there calm. We ate no more. The air was thick with grief, shock, and regret. No one spoke. The restaurant staff hovered, unsure whether to intervene. After what felt like hours, I stood. I'm done hiding, I said. I hugged my mother gently. I met my father's eyes, holding his gaze without hatred, only sorrow. I smiled softly at Ryan and left the room. I walked out head high. When I returned to my apartment that night, I didn't collapse. Instead, I sat at my desk and breathed. I had done what I set out to do. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. And it had set me free. That night after the dinner, I sat alone in my apartment for hours. The silence wasn't suffocating, it was clarifying. I replayed every moment in my head, every expression, every tremble of a hand, every word unspoken. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel satisfied. Felt empty. But in that emptiness was something more powerful than revenge. Peace. The next morning my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from friends. Calls from family members. People asking if I was alright, if things were true, if I needed help. I ignored most of them. What I needed was space to grieve, to process, and to rebuild. I cried not because I'd exposed them, but because I had loved them. I had trusted them. I had believed in the idea of family. Betrayal cuts deepest when it's rooted in love. But as the tears dried, another feeling crept in, resolve. I realized that I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their validation, their affection, or their hollow apologies. I had seen the truth, and the truth freed me. Within a week I set boundaries. I called my parents and calmly explained that I needed time apart, that rebuilding trust wasn't something I wanted to attempt. I didn't scream. I didn't curse them. I simply said, "You made your choices. I'll make mine." As for Ryan, I never responded to his texts. I didn't want to relive his shame or offer him an opening to explain himself. Some wounds need silence to heal. I started therapy. It wasn't because I was broken. It was because I needed guidance navigating grief, anger, and loneliness.